Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today that doesn't include minus 27 Celsius, that's minus 17 Fahrenheit, like we had here this morning. That is just not fun. So join me in having a nice hot chocolate as we jump into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from I'm the one who, the Karen of my building, told me her keycard isn't working, demanded I fixed her keycard, so I did. Let's jump right in. This just happened maybe 5 minutes ago and I think it's hilarious. I'm the facility manager for my building. Everything that happens and goes wrong is my responsibility. So I make sure everything runs smoothly. My boss had made it clear it's my building and I was hired to not only keep people in line, but run everything. I'm not a dink, but I hold people accountable, forcibly but politely. There was no facility manager for a long time before I came along, and both clients and employees ran amok with no order. In the 4 months I've been here, my boss has praised my performance and has gone to bat for me countless times. She's the best boss I ever had. I've got a firm but fair approach and my reputation reflects that. I've got a Karen in the building, and trust me, the name stereotype applies. Who's just a counselor for family services, has nothing to do with our group. She likes to complain about everything and gives my boss a headache almost daily. She shares an office with another woman who's unfortunately picking up on her Karen tendencies, Karen in training. I've been doing a keycard audit all week, and I knew to leave Karen's keycard alone because she's the only Karen in the building, so her name stands out. I am missing 75 keycards, lots of former employees having all door access, dating all the way back to 2015. Can't have that, so I deleted a lot of them, especially if it had a wacky name or just a room number. However, I did delete Kit's card information because it wasn't under her name. She just came to tell me her keycard wasn't working, and Karen happened to be passing by and overheard it. I went and fixed Kit's keycard, and we went to go check and see if it worked or not. We found Karen outside the office waiting, complaining to my boss that her keycard didn't work either. Karen wandered away, and my boss rolled her eyes, and I smiled and told her I would take care of it. After checking to make sure Kit's keycard worked, I went downstairs to check the system. Looked up Karen, and wouldn't you know it, her keycard was completely fine. In fact, it showed she had a master keycard. So I changed all of her permissions and limited her back to just her room only. I went upstairs and got my boss's attention because her office is next door to the ladies, and I mouthed listen and pointed. I opened their door and was all, "Hey Karen, I went and checked your keycard in the system. Everything is good to go. In fact, it said you had a master key to the building, and per the company's orders, since you're not a contractor or a company employee, I can't give you that access. So I had to revoke your status to just this room only. Can't have you bugging people on official business, wink. Thanks for bringing your keycard to my attention." She started to object that she needed the master keycard because XYZ, and I was all, yeah, sorry. Maybe before, but I'm the facility manager and you don't need access to everything except this office, and if you do, it's outside your pay grade, so you'll have to come get me. Okay? Cool, thanks, bye. And then just closed the door on her mid-sentence. My boss was quietly laughing her butt off in her office and gave me an air high five. Now, OP added an edit down below and I felt we should probably add it in. It says, "To be clear, I'm not talking down about my coworkers. They're fantastic people, and no, I'm not a suck-up. They work in education and bend over backwards to help students and customers get the information and help they need. The building mostly got shut down and neglected, and customers got lazy due to the C word. We offer free classrooms to those who need it, including a computer lab, by a reservation first come, first served basis. The problem we ran into was that the previous FM passed away suddenly, and the replacement was temporary, coupled with the C word, and this was our problem. My coworkers weren't able to enforce rules and regulations, and rooms were left destroyed and neglected, keys stolen, etc. Since my arrival, I've enforced the rules and allowed the staff to resume their normal duties without having to clean up after and babysit customers. Karen isn't staff, she's just renting an office. She has no business having access to our materials, supplies, or workspaces, especially when they're handling students' private information. Okay, it's a great story, but does anybody feel like OP opened themselves up for some malicious compliance from Karen? They said, you don't need to access everything except this office, and if you do, it's outside your pay grade, so you'll have to come get me, okay? That's an open invitation to bother you all the time, every day over nothing. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Bailey the Nerd. I can work in a group? Are you sure? Let's jump right in. Semi-necessary background. My senior year of high school, I went on foreign exchange to Brazil. I chose Brazil because it's a beautiful tropical country, and I'm a cocky idiot who thinks just because I'm super smart with math and science, that a whole language, Portuguese, would come easily to me. It didn't. I struggled with the language and found myself in an awkward situation. I'm a clever bloke, and I'm used to being able to express that. I'm that guy who likes to know how and why everything works the way it does. And I'm used to launching into conversations and explanations about how things work at the drop of a hat. But here I sat, unable to express myself as eloquently as I wanted to. So I turned from a talkative, mildly obnoxious know-it-all into a quiet kid. Necessary background. While I was in Brazil on exchange, I was placed into public school. Now, for my American friends, Brazilian high school is a little different from American. Instead of students going from class to class, the teachers would switch classrooms between each subject. The teacher who is the subject of this story was the English teacher, a man who looked almost identical to Weird Al Yankovic. He began his classes by walking into the room, handing out some English assignments, throwing an English music video on the TV with Portuguese subtitles, and then he'd read the newspaper or a book for the rest of the class. During his first class, while reading his newspaper, he loudly explained that group work was allowed on all assignments and tests, at which point everyone in the class looked at me. Clearly, he was not aware that he had an American exchange student in his class. Subsequently, every one of his classes for the rest of the term, all the students would form a long conga line around my desk, and he wouldn't notice. Of course, the assignments were trivial for me, the equivalent of middle school English, so I'd knock them out instantly, then provided explanations in broken Portuguese along with the answers. The smarter kids in the class would check their answers against mine and give better explanations. By the end of the year, everyone in his class had a perfect grade. Our teacher was ecstatic. Clearly, his teaching style of playing music videos and ignoring students was a success. He threw a small party for us with food and drinks. At the end of the party, as we were all leaving, I stopped to talk to him in English for the first time since being in his class. Hey Professor T, I just wanted to thank you for a fun class. Of course, you're American? Yes, you didn't know? I left him there slack-jawed, and with a class of students speaking very passable English. There was a quick little exchange in the comment section of this one from one person who said, "An American who speaks perfect English? I call BS." And OP replied with, "Well, my initials are BS. It's also worth mentioning two things. A, half of my family is English, and B, my grandmother has been an English teacher since the development of English as a language." Okay, OP, your grandma might be old, but she's not that old, come on. Now, can you imagine if OP didn't say anything to the teacher at the end? The teacher would be wondering the next year why so many people weren't doing as well in the class. Because, you know, sitting back and just doing nothing while they watch videos, that's the perfect way to teach them. Our next story today comes to us from TJ Hart 1970. Genetic math? If you say so. Let's jump right in. When I was a sophomore in high school, our biology teacher gave us a genetic math assignment. We were to use our parents' blood types to determine our possible blood types, and then confirm our work by typing our blood in class. This was before current biohazard practices. I'm adopted and knew its implications on the assignment, but my teacher didn't ask, and I was looking forward to having a little fun. He wasn't the worst teacher, but I didn't care for him. I'd been a blood donor, so I knew I was AB positive, and based on the assignment, that was not possible. Typing our blood involved pricking our finger, putting blood on 3 separate glass slides, and applying a drop of reactant on each slide. One reactant identified A, one B, and one positive and negative. Of course, all 3 indicated, so I showed the teacher my work with a confused look. "You've obviously messed up your test. Each reactant goes on only one slide." "Yes, sir, that's what I did." "Well, something isn't quite right. Let's test again together." We test again, the result was the same. "I'm sorry, someone must have mixed all the reactants. Let's get new bottles and test again." So I pricked my fingers a 3rd time. Same result. Now the teacher is getting a little nervous. He's stammering a bit. I just look at him, waiting to see what he'll say. At this point, it's worth noting, my biology teacher had only one volume setting, loud. Any conversation he ever had with any student was clearly heard by the whole class. Do you perhaps have anyone you call uncle who isn't really your uncle?" "Oh, sure. Uncle Jim is really my second cousin, once removed on my mother's side." No, I mean, does your mom have any close male friends besides your dad?" Confused look. So I guess what I'm trying to say, at this point, I'd had my fun. My teacher had beads of sweat on his brow and lip. I interrupted him. "Oh, of course, I'm adopted." That was the last year he gave that assignment. Okay, so this story really got me thinking, because did this teacher really come out and just ask if your mother was unfaithful? I mean, there were many other ways they could have gone about this, like, "Oh, one of your parents might have made a mistake about their blood type." You don't call somebody out for an illegitimate father in front of the whole class. Our next story today comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. Handy candy. Let's jump right in. This happened like 10 minutes ago and over the past couple days. I teach middle school, and even though I'm not the cool teacher, I like to say that I have a solid relationship with my students, good enough to get them to work hard for me. Their latest diagnostic shows this in spades. As I release one of my tech classes to lunch, I see a 1-foot-tall plastic jar of Copico candies. It's a cappuccino candy that's sweet with a mild coffee flavor. I know this because I tasted this delectable treat as I saw them in the common area. We all put things in the common area for other teachers to eat, utilize, etc. It's literally a zone identified as take some, but not all sort of thing. So I took some. By some, I mean half a handful, like 8 of them, representing 1% of the jar max. I gave them to seemingly random kids in my class as they enter for mathematics, but I'm truly picking the kids I've earmarked as having the highest growth regardless of level. They were so ecstatic to receive such a treat. Kids really dig this stuff. Even if they didn't like the flavor, it was the thought that counts. Anyway, one kid loved it so much, she went bragging at the end of the class about the candy she had whilst passing the teacher who, evidently, left the jar there for everybody. The fact that the joy on a young child's face brought such a disdain-fueled frump on anybody is downright criminal, but for a teacher? Come on. She then turned in my direction, wagging her veiny, decrepit, hate-infused phalange at me saying, "Are you serious? Don't be handing these candies to students. That's not what they're for, and you know it." She shook her head, walked away, and just as the last bell was ringing and kids were in class, finally she turned back to scoff, as if she hadn't been drama enough already. Enter delicious compliance. The next day, I truly expected to not see the jar of candies there, but there it stood in all its taupe glory. No sign or anything, just a vague memory of the words, "Don't hand these to students." My math class comes in again, and after I take attendance I go, "Okay, who didn't get a candy yet that wants one?" 18 some odd hands raised. That's exactly how many I threw, tossed, and slid to students' waiting arms. A thank you for trying so hard on the exam. I've got to hand it to that teacher though. She really found a way to extract the petty out of me. I'm pretty sure it's as easy as getting juice from an orange. So I think a little bit of my blonde came out when I was reading this one because I didn't realize what the malicious compliance was. But I was told down in the comments, of course, they didn't actually hand any of the candies to the students after they were told not to. They threw them, tossed them, and slid them to the waiting arms. Well done, OP. Our last story today also comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. the one where I took my in-laws to Disneyland without my wife. Let's jump right in. Back in the mid to late 90s, my wife, high school sweetheart, and at the time the bane of my existence, was planning to have children. Well, not so much planning with intent, so much as preparing for the natural result of procreative activities. I was working multiple jobs to her one. This is fine, completely. But for some reason, she repeatedly gave me a hard time for, well, literally everything. It seems like all of a sudden she was laying into me about everything. If you got a full-time job, you would only need 2 instead of 3, nitpicking literally everything. The now me would have handled all the insults and berating that I don't want to detail here like a champ, but in the moment, I was like, wow, woman, just wow. I gave her a pass because she has a market research job that has her traveling all over and doing field research and focus groups and trainings and what have you. She's a busy chick. I guess I can be her rock for a little while. So anyway, I got a job at the Disney store. Let me start off by saying that this was a great gig. Free lithographs, original prints from scenes from Disney, Paramount, etc. movies, discounted Disneyland tickets, key for later, Disney swag, you name it. I told my wife about the free stuff. She seemed to hate me this month for some reason, but maybe it was me not getting enough sleep. And the discounted tickets. I wound up using part of my first check to buy discounted tickets for the 2 of us. She was not amused, ironically. She said, "You need to get every penny back you paid for them because we need to pour every cent into the family. And by the way, you need to really start impressing my family. Start showing them some fiscal responsibility." Yes, she said fiscal responsibility and mentioned pennies twice in the same sentence. I replied, "Babe, I only want to impress you." Then she followed by saying, "Forget about me, you need to impress my family." Impressing her family was big to her because her family didn't necessarily like her choice in men up to and maybe even including now. Cue malicious compliance. I knew that if I studied my Disney trivia and was the fastest to answer in our Disney team meetings, training us on Disney product, how to treat guests, and how to treat customers, which Disney used to refer to potential shoplifters, I could not only get free lithographs and swag, but 100% free Disneyland tickets. I studied night after night, to the point where my girl said I was becoming obsessed, but I was determined to get as many free tickets as I could. I wound up winning so many rounds that I was banned, tongue-in-cheek, from winning anymore. I had 4 free tickets, but these tickets could only be used at certain times. Winds up that the only time I could really use them was the first week in January. They weren't your typical tickets per se, more like vouchers, and between my jobs and the blackout dates, this was the only week. But anyway, oh well, I take my vouchers. Lo and behold, cringe, I get home and share the good news to find out that I forgot that, in all the excitement, my girl had a conference in Texas that very week. Father-in-law was very insistent that we go, saying to me, "Son, you need a break more than anybody." And the whole family besides her went to Disneyland. However much it pains me to say this now, I had the greatest time of my life. And hearing those words from my father-in-law filled so many voids in my soul that it makes me cry to this day. I was all ready to comment on the relationship that they had that was obviously a little bit toxic, but OP did mention in a comment that they were working on the relationship, he was getting counseling, she was on medication, and she actually passed away when the kids were still young. So I'm not going to say too much about that, but completely unrelated to the relationship was something I got out of this story which I thought was really cool. The Disney store calls shoplifters customers, and the reason why they call them customers is because you can say to your boss, "I've got a customer over here who might need some help," and your boss knows exactly what you're talking about. Regular paying people are guests, and shoplifters are customers. That is a great process. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and let's hope it gets a little bit warmer in the coming days. We'll see you tomorrow.